And coming up in the next hour, Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is fighting on 7 fronts on the eve of 1 year of the 7th of October Hamas attacks. Terms French president's proposal of an arms embargo against his country to force a ceasefire a disgrace. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar questions the effectiveness of the United Nations as an instrument of peace. Implies it's merely been a bystander to the conflicts playing out in West Asia and Ukraine. Maldives President Dr. Mohammad Muizzu reaches Delhi for a 5-day India visit. He'll meet President Murmu and Prime Minister Modi on Monday. India's External Affairs Minister calls on the Maldives leader. The Indian women's team keeps its semi-finals hopes alive with a narrow win in the T20 Women's World Cup in Dubai, beat Pakistan by 6 wickets to reach the 106 runs target with 7 balls to spare. And winter knocks on India's door. Powdery snow dusts a high mountain pass in India's Kashmir, as the plains in the valley also get steady rain, bringing the mercury down and delighting tourists. First up, powerful explosions rocked Beirut's southern suburbs on Sunday as Israel intensified its strike in Lebanon, with the Israeli Defense Forces claiming to have killed over 400 Hezbollah operatives during ongoing ground operations till now. In retaliation, the Hezbollah launched an air assault with a squadron of attack drones on the maintenance and rehabilitation base of Israeli military near Haifa on Sunday as well. And on the eve of the 7th of October, 1 year Hamas attacks anniversary, Israel has placed its forces on high alert. Here's a detailed report by Dheeraj Das.
As Israel fights the forces of
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and French President Emmanuel Macron sparred over the conflict in West Asia. The French president's remarks of a halt to arms supplies to Israel triggered an angry reaction from Netanyahu. Macron said shipments of arms used in the conflict in Gaza should be stopped as part of a broader effort to find a political solution. Netanyahu responded by calling the proposal a disgrace.
And
I regret that Prime Minister Netanyahu made another choice and took on this responsibility, in particular land operations on Lebanese soil. And so, yes, if we call for a ceasefire, what's consistent is not to provide weapons of war. And I think that those who supply them cannot call for a ceasefire every day and continue to supply them.
As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Shame on them.
On the battlefield, Israel continued its operations against the Hezbollah's targets. A huge fireball lit up the sky and smoke billowed over Beirut as Israeli air attacks battered the southern suburbs overnight and early on Sunday. The most intense bombardment of the Lebanese capital since Israel sharply escalated its campaign against Iran-backed group Hezbollah last month. According to witnesses and military analysts, it was the single biggest attack of Israel on Beirut so far.
We have been displaced for 10 days now. We don't have food with us. We are not able to even go and bring new clothes. We left our homes and came here. Every night there is a strike. You cannot sleep. We came here and we are unable to go back from where we came. Our situation is terrible. If someone is able to find any way to get out of the country, they should. It's better than living on aid. People come and give us sandwiches. This is the way we are living now.
Besides, Israeli strikes targeted a number of weapons storage facilities and terrorist infrastructure sites belonging to the Hezbollah in Beirut. Moreover, Israeli military issued new evacuation alerts on Sunday for residents of around 25 areas in southern Lebanon, calling on them to head immediately to the north of the Awali River. While in Gaza, Israeli military said its forces had encircled the area of Jabalia, the focus of its operations. The IDF announced it has sent more soldiers and arms to the Gaza Strip, including the Netzarim corridor and the territory's border areas. It also announced that there will also be no reduction of forces in Rafah or in the Philadelphia corridor. As the situation in the region remains highly volatile, many nations have drafted contingency plans to evacuate citizens from Lebanon. An evacuation flight carrying Australian citizens from Lebanon landed in Cyprus on Sunday. Over the past several days, foreign nationals have fled Lebanon as fighting between Israel and Hezbollah has escalated. With Dheeraj Das, Gautam Roy, DD India. And after that scrap, Netanyahu has spoken with Macron over the phone and told him that limitations on Israel will strengthen Iran. That's according to a statement issued by the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Meanwhile, family members of Israeli hostages held in Gaza disrupted Tel Aviv traffic on Sunday morning, demanding the government secure the release of their loved ones on the eve of the first anniversary of Hamas's 7th of October attacks. Dozens of protesters chanted and held aloft placards featuring photographs of the hostages, with others depicting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his ministers captioned the cabinet of death. The families of many hostages have often accused Netanyahu of sacrificing their loved ones by insisting on the continuation of military operations in Gaza, and are now voicing similar concern over Israel's military escalation with Lebanon-based Hezbollah. At the same time, Israel has placed its forces on high alert in anticipation of the anniversary of the 7th of October attacks by Hamas on its territory, following a military official's statement that the country was preparing to retaliate against Iran's missile attacks. The heightened state of readiness coincides with Israel's escalating conflict with the Lebanese group Hezbollah, which the military chief of which, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, has vowed to strike without concession or respite. Also, the Israeli army on Sunday invited reporters to an exhibition of weapons and munitions, it says, were seized from Hamas militants in the year since the 7th of October attacks. Items from mid-sized rockets and rocket launchers to small knives and road vehicles were on display, some of which were seized in Gaza, while others were found within Israeli territory. Now, just days ahead of the anniversary of the 7th of October attacks on Israel, a gunman opened fire at a bus station in the Israeli city of Beersheba on Sunday, killing one woman and wounding 10 people, while the attacker was neutralized at the scene. The police described the shooting as a terrorist attack, but have not provided details on the gunman's identity. And joining us now to talk about his widening conflict, which is about to complete its first year, is Ambassador Anil Kumar Trigunayat, former senior diplomat who's also been India's envoy in Jordan and Libya. Welcome, Ambassador Trigunayat. It's often said that a bad situation will always worsen before it gets better. Is that the case in this conflict as well right now?
Well, I don't see that in short term it is getting any better. It is likely to get much worse, because now that we are seeing the war in Lebanon, and Hezbollah does not have a centralized leadership, which was at one time ready for the ceasefire, we will continue to see these kind of skirmishes and the heightened conflict, which will also be problematic even for Israel, not only for the Hezbollah and Lebanon. Unfortunately, Lebanese people are suffering due to this kind of war and the aggression that is taking place. Now, in that sense, one seems that there is no, the complete, rather I would say the defiance of the international law, the international wish has become the real norm today. And that is very unfortunate. And the terrorist groups, the states using terrorist methods are getting away with everything. I mean, that is something very disastrous happening. Now we will see that tomorrow what happens insofar as Israeli response to Iran's missile attacks is that will also decide the future of the region. So I don't see that it is going right now. Israel is being attacked by the Houthis, by the Iraqi militias, by Hezbollah and Hamas also. So they are fighting on several fronts. And then Iran is also there in the fray, supporting all these groups. Their minister has traveled to Lebanon and Damascus, assuring all assistance. And President Dr. Pezeshkian himself was in Doha, meeting all the GCC countries and trying to, discuss with them. Now, everybody is looking for de-escalation of the war, but nobody is trying to work for it, and that is unfortunately the ground situation. So in that, I don't see it. Of course, if it could be a ceasefire somehow, there could be accountability for all kinds of people involved in this, whether it is terrorist groups, whether it is separatist groups, axis of resistance, or for that matter, the Israelis who have already been called out in the ICJ and ICC and by the UN Security Council. So we are looking at a very, very difficult scenario in which no one seems to be listening to anyone, and everybody seems to think that whatever is their view is the right one. And in such a situation, you can only see the impotence of the international community and the international institutions.
Right. Now, but where is this conflict headed? How far will it really go? The descent, to what extent can it be? Because you have Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu saying his country is fighting on 7 fronts, and he's named all 7, including some extreme forces in Iraq and in Syria, I believe, apart from Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Who else would he count among these fronts in the coming days? Emmanuel Macron as well?
Not really. Emmanuel Macron has been trying to, because see, Lebanon and France have a very old relationship and it's a historic relationship for them. So it feels very responsible for that. And French have always been asking for ceasefire in different places, but they don't have that kind of an influence over Netanyahu, as we have seen in Netanyahu's statements against Macron directly. And therefore, I don't see that the French would be coming. But what they are saying is, has some logic that, what really carries on the war is the prevention of supplies of the arms and ammunition in certain cases. But this is not being adopted by any country in the world. All the countries who are supporting each other will continue to provide. Iran has been, and the reports that Iranian aircraft which was carrying ammunition for them was returned back due to the IDF warnings. So they will continue. So both sides will continue, and they've been armed to the teeth, both sides, they will fight. But what will happen is, in my view, the biggest challenge for Israel today or Netanyahu is how to secure their northern border. And that is something for which they'll have to continue to fight Hezbollah, which is currently in a disarray. But then individual commanders will be doing what they want to do, just throwing. And we are seeing the intensity of the missile attacks on Israel has increased tremendously. And one doesn't get the real picture how much of the damage. And besides, the Israeli society is also quite divided today. So this is not a very happy situation for Israel as well. Although they are fighting, they say they're fighting for their existence. And of course, they felt that their sovereignty was lost because 70-odd thousand people who were displaced from northern Gaza, they were not able to bring them back. So you don't control that area in that sense of the term, but that has further been, been vitiated by these continuing strikes. So it is not a very happy scenario in which one could predict that in a week or 10 days there would be. If sanity prevails, of course, both sides agree. And if, let us say, Israel attacks now, counterattacks, whatever, in response to the Iranian missile strikes, and if we see that it was a proportionate response, not a disproportionate response, then it is very likely that there could be some kind of an adjustment and understanding can be reached.
Yes, but for now, Israel's threat of retribution against Iran for the barrage of missiles and drones on the 1st of October is still to be put into action. Now, is this the proverbial pregnant pause? Because even today, all flights in Iran have been cancelled till 6 o'clock in Monday. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, Monday.
Oh, yeah, that is true. In fact, that has been true also of Israel. When there is a war taking place, these flights are there. Everybody fears that it could be that tonight or tomorrow morning you could have some kind of a response. But it is also, as you mentioned, pregnant pause. It is all kinds of possibilities. We have heard that the American the forces commander in the region is now coordinating with his Israeli counterpart about the kind of limitation of the strikes that are going to be made, and how, if Iran reacts further, those can be confronted. So I think that the situation is very, very volatile. and very uncertain at the moment. It's very difficult to predict which way the things will go. Tomorrow may bring some kind of a hope for peace, or it may be bringing the eternal war in the area.
Would you go to the extent of saying that till the time elections are held in the US, they're done with, there's a new president in the White House, this conflict will be very tough to resolve?
Well, that has been the case always because the United States has followed a very confused policy. On the one hand, they say that there should be a ceasefire, and I have never seen a foreign minister traveling so many times to the region. I mean, Blinken seemed to be a very harassed man when talking to Israelis and his counterparts there, bringing all kinds of deals on the table, which were all backed out by both sides, because both sides were not interested in a ceasefire. That is the thing. And so, therefore, each one wants to extract the maximum mileage out of it. And so, the United States elections, of course, they will have an impact for Democrats if this war expands. Naturally, it will have an impact on them. But Netanyahu obviously is hoping that if, for some reason, Trump wins, and then they will be far more emboldened in the bargain. So it is true. I mean, war is not going to end so soon, and they continue for a long time now. We have seen nobody thought that the Israel's action against Hamas would last for 1 year, but it has, despite them being the strongest army of the region. So today it is very difficult to predict. You can start a war, but you cannot end it.
Yes, nobody thought that the war in Ukraine would last this long as well, and
Yes.
look where we are, where that particular conflict is concerned. But thank you so much for joining us and talking about it on the eve of the first year of the October 7 attacks. Thank you, Ambassador Trigunayat. Now, Pope Francis on Sunday urged for an immediate ceasefire in Lebanon and Gaza ahead of the first anniversary of the Gaza conflict.
I call upon for an immediate ceasefire on all fronts, including Lebanon. Let us pray for the Lebanese, especially for the people in the south who are forced to leave their villages. I appeal to the international community to put an end to the spiral of revenge and not to repeat attacks like the one carried out by Iran a few days ago, which can plunge the region into an even bigger war.
And still to come on DD India NewsHour, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he'll present his victory plan to allies during the 25th Ramstein meeting on the 12th of October in Germany. And Congo launches its first Mpox vaccination campaign. Also, Tunisians vote on Sunday in an election in which President Kais Saied is seeking a second term. Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, in a move to further strengthen Indo-Maldivian ties, Maldivian President Mohamed Muizzu has arrived in India for a 5-day visit, which is also his first bilateral visit to the country after assuming office. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, also called on President Muizzu. In our next report, DD India's Mihir Mercury sheds light on the entire gamut of India-Maldives ties.
Situated in the heart of the Indian Ocean, India and the Maldives share more than just geographical proximity. These two democracies also share the same vision for prosperity in the region. With that in mind, Maldivian President Mohamed Muizzu landed in India's national capital, New Delhi, on Sunday for his first bilateral visit to the country. Sunday saw India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar meeting with the visiting Maldivian president. Jaishankar appreciated his commitment to enhance India-Maldives relationship. President Muizzu's India visit will also feature meeting with India's President Murmu and discussions with Prime Minister Modi on bilateral, regional and international issues of mutual interest. President Moizu will also visit Mumbai and Bengaluru, where he would be attending business events. India has been a trusted development partner for Maldives for decades. Some of the landmark projects started in the past include Indira Gandhi Memorial Hospital, built with Indian grant assistance in 1995. Maldives Institute of Technology, built at a cost of 12 crore rupees, was handed over to Maldives in 1996. India-Maldives Friendship Faculty of Hospitality and Tourism Studies was built with Indian grant assistance and was handed over to Maldives in the year 2014. India is supporting restoration of Hukuru Miski or the Friday Mosque in Malé. Greater Malé Connectivity Project aims to connect Malé to Willingili, Gulifalu and Thilafushi Islands via series of bridges, causeways and roads. Greater Malé Connectivity Project is funded through separate $400 million line of credit and $100 million grant from India. Greater Malé Connectivity Project is progressing well and is monitored regularly by a joint project monitoring committee. This development cooperation comes as the Maldives holds a special place in PM Modi's vision of Sagar or security and growth for all in the region and India's neighborhood first policy. Mihir Makhuri reporting for DD India.
Japan and Italy have agreed to sign an MOU that will give Tokyo priority to buy liquefied natural gas from an Italian firm during natural disasters and other emergencies. The two governments announced their decision at a conference for LNG producers and consumers in Hiroshima City on Sunday. The Japanese government believes that LNG, a key fuel for thermal power generation, will remain an important energy source despite decarbonization efforts. The government also announced on Sunday that it aims to reach an agreement on intergovernmental cooperation with South Korea for the LNG procurement. Tunisians voted on Sunday in an election in which President Kais Saied is seeking a second term, with his main rival suddenly jailed last month and most opponents imprisoned or barred from running. Sunday's election pits Saied against two rivals, his former ally turned critic, Chap party leader Zuhair Maghzoui and Ayachi Zamil, who had been seen as posing a big threat to Saied until he was jailed last month. Tunisia had for years been hailed as the only relative success story of the 2011 Arab Spring uprisings for introducing a competitive, though flawed, democracy following decades of autocratic rule. However, rights groups now say Saied, in part since 2019, has undone many of these democratic gains while removing institutional and legal checks on his power. The 66-year-old leader has rejected criticism of his actions, saying he is fighting a corrupt elite and traitors and that he will not be a dictator. Senior figures from the biggest parties, which largely oppose Saied, have been imprisoned on various charges over the past year, and those parties have not publicly backed any of the three candidates on Sunday's ballot. Other opponents have been barred from running. The Election Commission said turnout by 1 p.m. was 14%. Just under 10 million Tunisians are eligible to vote. Political tensions have risen since an electoral commission named by Saied disqualified three prominent candidates last month amid protests by opposition and civil society groups. European far-right leaders rallied on Sunday to the side of Italian Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini, who faces a possible 6-year jail term for refusing to let a migrant boat dock when he was Interior Minister in 2019. Hungary's Viktor Orban and Dutch nationalist Geert Wilders joined senior politicians from across the continent to address the annual rally of Salvini's League Party in the northern Italian village of Pontida. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to unveil his victory plan during meetings with US President Joe Biden and other allies in Germany next weekend. Meanwhile, Russia has launched drones and missiles against Ukraine on the battlefield. Amid all this, Russia's Gazprom has announced that it will continue gas supplies to Europe through Ukraine. Rabindra Chauhan brings us more.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that he will present his victory plan to allies during 25th Ramstein meeting on October 12th in Germany. This plan outlines specific steps for a just resolution to the conflict with Russia.
In the coming days, our team, government officials and diplomats will engage in political consultations, while the military personnel will focus on filing the military aspects of the victory plan. This can quickly bolster Ukraine's position, particularly at the front lines. Everything outlined in the plan is entirely achievable for our partners. The world has the resource of strengthening, which will allow to move forward according to peace formula.
On battlefield, Ukraine's Air Force said that Russia launched 87 attack drones and 4 missiles overnight, targeting Ukrainian territory. The Air Force said on the Telegram messaging app that Ukraine's air defense units destroyed 56 of the drones and 2 of the missiles. Earlier, Russia said that its troops had taken control of settlement in the Donetsk region in response to Ukraine's attack on a Russian military command post with missiles and rockets. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that its forces also struck various Ukrainian military targets, including an electronic warfare station, anti-artillery radar, and an ammunition post. As the crisis between Russia and the West deepens on the borders of Ukraine, Europe and Russia's long interdependence on one another for energy has become a critical bargaining piece on both sides. Russia's multinational energy corporation Gazprom said it would send 42.1 million cubic meters of gas to Europe via Ukraine on Sunday, a volume in line with that of recent days. Earlier, Zelensky had presented the plan to Biden, and both the candidates running to succeed him, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, last week after months of Kiev's teasing ideas on how to end the war. Rabindra Chauhan's report for DD India.
And still to come on DD India NewsHour. We'll be speaking with our expert guest about the questioning of the effectiveness and relevance of the United Nations by India's External Affairs Minister. The Indian Air Force successfully rescues American and British climbers stuck for days on Chowkhamba Mountain.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy, and before we go any further, another look at some of our top stories. Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is fighting on 7 fronts on the eve of 1 year of the 7th of October Hamas attacks. Terms French president's proposal of an arms embargo against his country to force a ceasefire a disgrace. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar questions the effectiveness of the United Nations as an instrument of peace. Implies it's merely been a bystander to the conflicts playing out in West Asia and Ukraine. And Maldives President Dr. Mohamed Muizzu reaches Delhi for a 5-day India visit. He'll meet President Murmu and Prime Minister Modi on Monday. India's External Affairs Minister calls on the Maldivian leader. Now, the Kautilya Economic Conclave 2024 concluded on Sunday in New Delhi. At the closing session, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said that BRICS has generated a lot of interest among other nations. Dr. Jaishankar also spoke about the importance of Quad, saying it is one of the key mechanisms in the Indo-Pacific. He also said that the United Nations has failed to step up on key global issues, including COVID and conflicts. The External Affairs Minister further said that the United Nations is like an old company, not entirely keeping up with the market.
What are the prospects?
The final day of the Kautilya Economic Conclave 2024 saw a thought-provoking session with leaders discussing some of the most important issues confronting the Indian as well as the economies of the global South. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar attended the closing session on India and the globe. Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke on a number of issues, including India's role in Global South, global interest in expansion of BRICS, importance of Quad, and India's relations with its neighbor. Jaishankar also questioned the role of United Nations during global challenges, including COVID and conflict.
Probably the biggest thing which happened in our lives was COVID. Now, think about what did the UN do on COVID, and I think the answer is not very much. Now, you have two conflicts going on in the world today, two very serious conflicts. Where is the UN on them? Essentially a bystander.
Dr. S. Jaishankar also warned about the potential danger of AI. Speaking at length about India's role on the world stage, Dr. Jaishankar emphasized the importance of a proactive foreign policy in today's rapidly changing geopolitical landscape. He pointed out that India is forging strong and progressive ties with countries across the globe.
It's in the nature of things that every nation naturally prioritizes its interests, but I would argue that Global South itself has great value on a range of issues. Again, I don't have to position myself as a leader of the Global South. You are part of a collective, and if in the collective you are a trusted member of the collective and you are an articulate member of the collective, I think people expect you to do a little bit more. Again, I'm not entirely sure that some of the answers can be found bilaterally.
The closing day session at Kautilya Economic Conclave also saw the participation of Bhutan's Finance Minister, Leonpo Leke Dorji. The minister highlighted the strategic relationship with India, which has been a long-standing partner in Bhutan's development journey.
I want to congratulate our honest, our closest and the friendliest neighbor for working towards a developed India by 2047. A developed India is good for Bhutan, it's good for the region, and it's good for the world. We in Bhutan will always be rooting for India.
As the Kautilya Economic Conclave 2024 drew to a close, these discussions reflect the pressing need for nations to rethink their alignment and global strategies. The three-day conclave, which began on October 4, has set the stage for meaningful dialogue and future cooperation. Bureau Report, TD India.
Now let's talk about what the Indian External Affairs Minister had to say about the UN and its current relevance and role, especially where conflicts are concerned, or even global challenges such as COVID. Ambassador Manjeev Puri joins us, former senior diplomat. Welcome to NewsHour, Ambassador Puri. Just a few days ago, after the UNG, an unprecedented move was made by Israel. It declared the UN chief as persona non grata for not condemning Iran's 1st of October missile barrage. The UN chief was forced to condemn it thereafter. Now, what does that tell us about the UN?
Gautam, thank you very much. You know, these questions and the observations that you heard, including from the Honorable Minister, come straight away to people's mind. But what is the United Nations? Let's understand that. It's the coming together of 193 nations, and in the General Assembly, in the United Nations organization, there are 5 countries who are permanent members of the Security Council who have a veto. So that's the state of play, and we must understand that the United Nations in that sense reflects us meaning the entire global community. Now, you have rightly pointed out to the issues of the Secretary General. I personally, of course, strongly feel that the Secretary General needs to demonstratively do much more himself. Of course, I recognize that, frankly, there isn't much that will come out of it. These things have happened in the past too, because, frankly, there is a superpower in action, and the superpower ensures that the United Nations is stymied and is not allowed to go forward on any of these things. Israel on its own could not have taken this decision. We know that quite well. You mentioned the question of COVID. Yes, I wish the UN and the WHO, etc., had stepped up much further. And, you know, frankly, they too were caught on the wrong foot and really didn't cover themselves with glory. But there again, I would make the point that while countries like India stepped up, did what we could, developed vaccines, vaccinated a large number of people, helped various countries in the world, it really was that the real powerful players in the world, the Western world, didn't also do much for A itself, and frankly could not set a role which could be a standard operating procedures for others. This is a fact of the world that we are seeing today. And the minister is absolutely right in highlighting his, let me not use the word frustration, but let me say his unhappiness that global coming together in international governance isn't helping us find the answers. But without international governance, we won't have answers in any case. Let me leave with you the very idea of climate change. Can we do it without coming together and without cooperating? Certainly not. I take you back to his own words that for many of the things, bilateralism is not the answer. We have to act globally.
Certainly. Now, let me just stick to the subject of peace. When was the last time, when was the UN, to your mind and memory, an effective arbiter of peace in any conflict?
Well, look, let me take you back to many, many years when, Gautam, you were perhaps a very young person. The Vietnam War, did the UN really do anything? No, because one country again exercised a veto. The same things have happened in many other cases. But where has the UN stepped in? In many conflicts in Africa, we have ourselves sent peacekeeping troops which have gone as UN peacekeepers. And if I may point out to one...
But those are peacekeepers, not peace determiners.
No. What does peacekeeping do? It ends up in trying to cool the situation and finding via media. The UN itself is the one which legitimizes these kind of actions. That's what international governance is about. The UN is us. It is us. Its officials act on the kind of mandate that we give it. We nation states who sit in the General Assembly and in the Security Council. And let me draw your attention to Libya. Now, you and I, you started this program by talking about Tunisia and the Arab Spring. You and I or many others may not agree to what has happened in the case of Libya. But, a very authoritarian and difficult regime was removed. It did happen as a result of UN action. India abstained. I was the one who exercised that vote. But, the UN has been there. It is an effective tool, if allowed to be an effective tool.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it is a power game of nations.
Now, for years, things have been talked about in terms of reform. And there's the G4, which includes India, among others, who've been saying that the reform that is required is the expansion of the UNSC, the Security Council, which is 15 members. 5 of them are permanent, the others are temporary. And the permanent membership needs to be expanded. That's what has been the entire leitmotif of what India said. Even at the UNGA this time around in September, a lot of countries came forward and supported India's cause, along with that of the others, Germany, Japan, and others, Brazil included. And there's some space for Africa there as well. Some arguing that 2 African countries or the African Union could get a space. But why is it not moving forward? More and more countries are supporting this cause.
Gautam, this is a question which we have been asking for more than a decade, in fact, much more than a decade. And rightly so. And we need to continue to ask the question, because the world has changed from 1945. And today, what used to be called emerging countries like India are leading powers in the world. We have abilities, and we have abilities to discharge our global responsibility. Remember, Germany and Japan were initially excluded as being enemy countries. That's the nature of what happened at that particular time. So I have no doubt that change is inevitable. Hopefully, it will be sooner. Why does it not take place? Look,
it's not as if the UN has remained unchanged since the time it was formed after the Second World War. It has undergone considerable reform. There have been bodies, arms added to it to give it more strength and more effectiveness. The UNDP came about after a lot of decolonization, when a lot of these former colonies joined the United Nations, and then there was a need for development, because the UN is not just about fighting or stopping wars, it's about also countering conditions that create conflict.
Gautam, you are absolutely right, and these are exactly the kind of arguments that we have accepted and given, and others have given over a long period of time. But at the end of the day, international governance and the UN being at its pinnacle is a power game of nations, which is why we are talking in terms of expansion of the permanent membership of the Security Council, because it is the ultimate arbiter in that sense of the term. All these things have happened. We've been beneficiaries. We've worked hard in all sorts of areas. UN Women was created when we were there, and so on. Many of these things have happened. But Why isn't the council expanding in its permanent membership in particular? There was an expansion in the 60s in its non-permanent membership. Why isn't it happening? My simple answer to that is the permanent five are not there together as yet.
Right. And on the question of veto, is there any concerted or sort of coming together opinion on whether there should be the veto power or not in the UNSC among the P5? Because that would take care of a lot of problems, or that would make perhaps the UN completely toothless, depending on the way you look at it.
Gautam, in 1945, with the experience of the League of Nations, the big players at that time decided that it would be toothless if they didn't have the veto power, and hence the veto. Now you have the veto. There are these very large countries which have this particular, let me say, advantage to what is happening. And we have to remember that's the way the world stands ordered as it is today, no matter the shifting geopolitics and the shifting change. Now, should it change? Should it go away? I really don't think that's happening. What is, let me say, the latest kind of proposals put forward by the United States for whatever they are worth is a very simple one. Expand the permanent membership without a veto. I think I've answered the question.
It's amusing those suggestions are. But as long as they keep coming and there's some movement forward, let's hope that things improve and there is actual reform in the UN which is required, which needs to reflect what is happening in the world around us, how things have evolved, and where countries have created their own space, because otherwise we will keep functioning in these Gs that we have in the world, and India is no stranger to those either, and India knows how to play that game, that G as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Pastor Puri. Now, the Indian Air Force, along with multiple agencies, successfully rescued American and British climbers stuck for days on Chowkhamba Mountain. The two women alpine mountaineers were rescued from the attempted Chowkhamba 3 peak expedition in Uttarakhand's Chamoli district on Sunday. Undaunted by the 18,500-foot altitude, IAF's Cheetah pilots, that is a helicopter which can fly high altitude, displayed exceptional flying skills and conducted the search operation for over 60 hours to ensure the climbers' safe rescue. Now, after a hiatus of over 2 decades, the Indian Air Force conducted a mega air show on the Marina Beach of Chennai ahead of the 92nd Air Force Day. A total of 72 aircraft took part in the show. This year's event is based on the theme Bharatiya Vayu Sena Saksham, Sashakt, Atmanirbhar, that is the Indian Air Force, potent, powerful and self-reliant. The air show featured Rafales, Sukhoi 30 MKIs, Mirage 2000s, Airbus C-295 MWs, MiG-29 fighters, P-8I Poseidon anti-submarine warfare aircraft, Tejas and many more. It also featured vintage planes such as the Dakotas and the Harvard. Now, India's Minister of State for External Affairs, Pavitra Margarita, who is visiting Barbados, met on Sunday with Barbados' Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Kerry Simmons. Minister Pavitra Margarita appreciated his continued support for strong India-Barbados ties. Earlier, the minister was in Grenada from the 2nd to the 4th of October. In the last leg of his visit, the minister will be in Antigua, where he will meet other leaders. And still to come on DD India NewsHour. Slovenian authorities send rescuers and supplies to assist local Bosnian authorities in the aftermath of the deadly floods that hit the Balkans. And the Indian Army Arena Polo team defeats US military team in a closely contested test match in California. Plus, Coco Gauff overpowers Muchova in straight sets to win China Open title at Beijing.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy. Slovenian authorities on Sunday dispatched rescuers and supplies to support local Bosnian officials following devastating floods in the Balkans. Head of Slovenian Civil Defense, Leon Pehin, informed that a convoy of 16 vehicles, 46 people and 6 dogs are heading to the hardest hit areas. Rescuers have been searching for missing persons in Donja Jabljinica after the floods, which began on the 4th of October, claimed 21 lives, with many still unaccounted for. Today is World Cerebral Palsy Day. This day serves as a platform to amplify the voices of individuals living with the affliction. This year's theme, Uniquely CP, tells about the uniqueness of the cerebral palsy community, their interests, their passions and identities, showing that they're not solely defined by their disability. The day conveys a powerful message to society that individuals with cerebral palsy can achieve their goals in life with their distinct capabilities and strengths. And time now to get to some sporting updates as well. Well, India defeated Pakistan by 6 wickets in their Women's T20 World Cup match in Dubai on Sunday. Chasing 106 runs as a target, India reached 108 for 4 in 18.5 overs, with Shefali Verma smacking 32 runs of 35 balls, including 3 fours. The result also saw India bag their first win of the campaign, having lost to New Zealand in their opener.
India defeated Pakistan by 6 wickets in their second match of the ICC Women's T20 World Cup on Sunday. After losing to New Zealand in their opening match of the global tournament, the women in blue played a near-perfect game. Chasing a target of 106 runs, the Indian batters struggled in the beginning but soon got the rhythm back and started scoring the runs. Shefali Verma remained the top scorer for India. She scored 32 runs before being removed by Umaima Sohail. Skipper Harmanpreet Kaur and Jamima Rodriguez were other notable contributors for India. For Pakistan, Fatima Sana picked up 2 wickets, while Sadia Iqbal and Umaima Sohail clinched 1 wicket each. Earlier, Pakistan scored 105 runs for the loss of 8 wickets in 20 overs, with Nida Dar, Muneba Ali and Fatima Sana contributed some runs. For India, Arundhati Reddy took 3 wickets, Shriyanka Patel picked 2 wickets, and Renuka Singh and Dipti Sharma and Asha Shobna clinched 1 wicket each. Arundhati Reddy was announced player of the match for picking 3 wickets. Sports Desk, DD India.
The Indian Army Arena Polo team defeated the US military team in a closely contested test match at the Lakeside Polo Club in California, US. The match ended with a score at 13-10 in favor of the Indian team. Lieutenant Colonel Prithvi Singh, Lieutenant Colonel Yatendra Kumar, Major Mrityunjay Singh and Lieutenant Colonel R.K. Gautam gave a good account of their horsemanship. Francesco Bagnaia claimed the Japan MotoGP title ahead of championship frontrunner Jorge Martin on Sunday. Italy's Bagnaia cut the Spaniards' lead in the overall standings to 10 points with 4 races remaining. Defending world champion, Bagnaia overtook pole sitter Pedro Acosta on the first lap at Motegi and stayed in front to finish 1.189 seconds ahead of Martin, with Marc Marquez third. And Coco Gauff overpowered Carolina Muchova in straight sets to win the China Open on Sunday for her second title of the year and 8th overall. The 20-year-old American and last year's US Open champion stormed to victory 6-1, 6-3 in 1 hour 16 minutes in Beijing, adding China Open to her triumph in Auckland in January. Gauff made a fast start, breaking the Czech for a 2-0 lead in the first set and then holding her own serve without conceding a point. The young American rattled off momentarily but wrapped the first set up in 29 minutes in her third set point. Gauff is the second US player to win the China Open after Serena Williams was victorious in 2004 and 2013. Now, as the serene landscapes of Jammu and Kashmir embrace the first snowfall of the season, Razdan Top, the majestic mountain pass connecting the Gurez Valley to Bandipora, has been blanketed with a light dusting of fresh snow. Overnight, the high peaks shimmered with their new icy coat, while the plains of Kashmir were refreshed by steady rainfall. The change in weather has brought a noticeable dip in temperatures, but it left the tourists delighted.
वो पूरी हुई कश्मीर नाम सुन के पहले सबसे पहले बर्फ ही आता है दिमाग के अंदर लेकिन वो अभी पूरी हो गई
हमको लगता है अभी हाल फिलहाल में स्नो है तो इट्स नाइस एक्सपीरियंस यहाँ पर थोड़ा ही मिला था अभी नवंबर उतना होता है कि नवंबर से लोगों को स्नो मिलता है हम लोग को अक्टूबर मिल गया इट्स नाइस
And pet owners in the Philippines dress their dogs, cats and rabbits in their Sunday best for a blessed ceremony held by a Catholic priest at a mall in Manila. This event celebrated World Animal Day, which falls on the 4th of October and coincides with the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of animals. More than 100 pets were brought in for this year's religious and blessing ceremony, and Catholic priests sprinkled holy water to bless them. Pet owners expressed their deep connection to their pets on the occasion. And that's all we have for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app as well. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code on the screen and download the app now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.